So let's start in Greg's home state, the state of Illinois, where property taxes are among the highest in the nation. And there was quite a debate this week about property taxes in Illinois, and it really got started on Monday when Governor J.B. Pritzker was in Chicago, and he talked to reporters at an event unrelated involving the General Consular Corps of Chicago, but he was asked after delivering a speech about property taxes and how residents might get property tax relief. And so the governor, in his remarks, pointed the finger at local governments. Let's hear what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say Monday.
Well, I want to remind you that property taxes are not determined by the state of Illinois, but rather by local governments, indeed local units of government, including school boards, park boards, library boards, municipalities, etc. So I think people sometimes get confused. I know the Republican Party in Illinois is quite confused and thinks that this is a state issue when it is actually a local issue.
Now, the governor went on to say that the state government, in his budget, since he's been governor in 2019, the state's been funding public education at a higher level, and therefore local governments should not have to raise property taxes as much as they have. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, as you might expect, after the remarks about the Illinois GOP, Illinois House Republican leader Toni McCombie had some comments when she had a press conference just a couple of days later at the Illinois Capitol with fellow Republican State Rep Dan Ugasti. Here's what Toni McCombie said.
Governor, people are not confused. Republicans are not confused. We Republicans are trying to do our job, and we are certainly not passing the blame to locals. We blame you, your policies, and your priorities. We are also not the ones proposing tax hikes to fund out-of-control spending and out-of-touch priorities.
And McCombie and Ugasti also talked about specific pieces of legislation that they have introduced that they say would help bring property taxes down in Illinois. They, again, talked about the spending in Illinois, how budgets under Governor Pritzker have increased exponentially each year since he has been in the governor's office. The man who helped break this down for us at thecentersquare.com is with Americans for Prosperity Illinois, Brian Costin. I talked to Brian about the property tax situation and suggested that local governments are pointing at state officials are pointing at local governments. And so I asked Brian, and told us it seems like nobody's taking charge. Brian Costin with Americans for Prosperity Illinois.
Locals are not taking responsibility. They're pointing fingers at the state government, and the state government is pointing them right back. And as a result, we have total incompetence in the state of Illinois when it comes to the issue of property taxes. It's no surprise that we have the number one property taxes in the nation. We have catastrophic situations going on in the state of Illinois. I'll point to like the city of Harvey, for example, where property taxes are above 4.5% for residents. What you see in a situation like that, when you have runaway property taxes, is communities die. People leave. Homes get foreclosed upon. They get abandoned. Businesses leave. They go to other states. If 4.5 property tax rates are okay for Governor Pritzker, he is co-signing the state of Illinois to economic ruin.
That's Brian Costin. Now, there are several pieces of legislation introduced, not just by Republicans, also by Democrats at the State House, aimed at addressing property taxes. There is also a resolution proposed by State Rep LaShawn Ford, who is also a Democratic nominee for Congress. He's a Chicago Democrat on the west side of the city, aiming to replace Danny Davis, who's retiring after decades in Congress. And Ford's resolution would be for a constitutional amendment, which would be needed in Illinois in order to impose a millionaire's tax. Income over $1 million would be taxed with a 3% surcharge. And as the proposal stands, we'd be looking at half of the money generated from that to go to property tax relief for people who have a homestead exemption. The other half would go to public education. So that's a debate we'll be watching. The Illinois legislature continues in its 2026 session until the end of May. So that's something that Greg Bishop and all of us at thecentersquare.com will be keeping a close eye on, because this property tax debate will not go away, especially as affordability continues to be a hot button word, as you might say, around the United States. And Illinois is certainly no exception.